NAIA football is the true version of what college football is supposed to be. And it is the best classroom experience an 18 to 22-year-old male can have. One of the most valuable parts of a college education is that experience. It's life in a microcosm, and it's just something special for a young man to have to experience.
And don't you let a moment go without thinking about what's there for you to reach out and grasp.
This is NAIA Football with Dannelly and Donley from the Victory Sports Network. I'm your host, Jason Dannelly. Thanks again for checking us out again on another Sunday night. We are nearing the end of the NAIA football regular season. Next weekend, the last games get played. And at this time, we'll be talking about who made the NAIA postseason. But there's like 46 more games to go, a whole bunch of stuff that's got to happen, and we still have to try to determine who's going to be some of the automatics as conference champions. We're going to talk about that all tonight, as well as break down the featured games of the weekend. We've got 3 of those coming your way, plus a whole bunch more games that we're going to run through. Me, along with my host, co-host, whatever we want to say here, Pat Donnelly joins us. Pat, hey, man. Good
Hi,
weekend
pal.
of football. Hey,
let's go, man. Let's go. So we got a lot to talk about, but a lot of stuff, like you said, can still happen. My goodness. You know, you can kind of narrow things down, but big games yesterday, obviously some huge implications of how things are going to shake out here for the postseason, but still got a lot more to go.
We do. We've got a ton of football to go. And the thing was, like, when I was going through and making all of my, graphics and slides for this week, and I got to the graphics for, potential at-large and potential conference qualifiers, and I went through what was on there last week, and honestly, there weren't a lot of changes because we didn't get any resolution from some conferences like I thought we would get this week. We did from a couple. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Plus, we'll have our overtime segment and some things that Pat and I will talk about in that segment because he attended a game yesterday. I watched a bunch of football, some good things going on out there. So without further ado, hey man, let's just get into it. Let's talk about what's happening this week in NAIA football. Of course, our analysis of all these games is brought to us by our good friends at Huddle. If it weren't for Huddle, we wouldn't be able to watch 8, 9 NAIA football games every weekend and bring you our thoughts and what happened in some of these games. We'd be tied to just 1 or 2. Our good friends at Huddle make it possible. Pat, you say it every week. It's a game changer, man.
Total game changer. It's been fantastic. This job. It's actually kind of made it a little more difficult. We have to spend more time on it because the film is quality. You want to get through as many games as you can to provide at least some detailed analysis as many games as possible. So Huddle's a game changer, fantastic, and I don't know what we do without him.
Yeah, it's great. And like you said, I've gone from like, well, I watched my games on Saturday and that's it. Now it's like all of a sudden on Saturday night, it's like, oh yeah, that game came in. Oh yeah, that game in. Oh, Sunday morning got these games. And all of a sudden you're going like, wow, I've got a lot of games I got to get through. One of the first games that I went through yesterday, watching a little bit live and then watching on Huddle, was in the KCAC because we still don't really know what's going to happen in the KCAC. There's no clear-cut champion yet, and that got even cloudier yesterday as Evangel went down to Southwestern at home, 21-3. Southwestern forced 5 fumbles in this game. Quarterback Braden Howell was 17 of 25 for 178 yards. The Mound Builders did a good job running the football in this game and capitalizing on those turnovers to get that 21-3 win. So that loss by Evangel, they had a little bit of an upper hand over Friends because they beat Friends earlier in the season. They no longer have that because they've got 2 losses in the conference, and Friends won yesterday 36-35 over McPherson. This was a back and forth game early on, and then in the second half things kind of calmed down a little bit. Cavante Baker, 19 carries, 118 yards, a touchdown. Rigsby had 3 carries for 91 yards. He zipped off for a long touchdown early in the game to kind of give the lead to Friends. Hey, McPherson's Tristan Zabo had a nice game, 230 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air. Also did a nice job scrambling, running the football a little bit. Jalil Brown had 18 carries, 140 yards. So the KCAC, as it stands right now, Pat, if Friends wins this week against Bethany, they are the conference champion. However, if they lose, then you've got Southwestern that could potentially beat McPherson and win the conference championship. Or if McPherson beats Southwestern and Friends loses to Bethany, then McPherson gets in. So no real clarity. Now, Bethany's no pushover. You've got Mike Grossner coaching there. You've got an improved football team. Granted, the wins and losses haven't worked out the way that they quite wanted to this year, but we've seen enough crazy things happen in the KCAC, Pat. Like, I wouldn't put it past them for us to be talking next Saturday about, like, what happened.
Don't count out the Fighting Swedes.
Never.
Never.
Can't.
Ever. I was so ready for you to break that down with those scenarios, and you nailed it. The KCAC aficionado, the guru of the KCAC, Jason Dannelly, just laid it all out for you folks. And it's going to be crazy.
I've spent way too much time, Pat, on the internet looking at PDFs of sport policies for conferences. It is insane. One conference that we will not have to worry about a tiebreaker in at all is the GPAC. Morningside with their win, and then, of course, with Northwestern beating Dort eliminates all possibility of a tie or anything like that. So Morningside with their huge win over Waldorf 70-7 obviously has secured the conference fully. 658 yards, no turnovers, 3 running backs over 100 yards. This one was one of those, hey, we're going to get through this game. The other side, we saw Dort and Northwestern in a top 15 battle. I was thinking there'd be a little bit more offense in this game, Pat. Eli Stater with a 38-yard field goal in the third quarter was the only points we saw on the board. 3-0 in this one. Dort only 216 total yards. Northwestern with only 169 total yards in this game. It was not a game for people that want a lot of offense like yourself. If you're a defensive guy, you loved it. I mean, these teams early in the game, I was watching it. It's like I had to go back to the play-by-play to go, how many punts have there been? There's like 6 punts in the first half with time still left. And, you know, Dort got themselves in decent field position a couple times, but just they couldn't convert. They couldn't get the field goal to go through at the end of the game. They ended up getting it blocked. They had an opportunity to tie it there late in the fourth quarter. This was one of those games, like I said, Pat, defense, you love it. Offense, you're just going, oh, wow, this was not what I wanted.
Well, I was at a game in person yesterday, and I was checking the NAIA scoreboard throughout. And we actually were streaming a game live as well on the St. Francis luxury booths are just fantastic now. We have outdoor televisions we can stream. It's just fantastic. But I was looking at this game, Jason, and I was thinking to myself, 3-0, there's zero chance I'm watching this game. Zero. And I was so happy to know you were watching it live. And yes, there was zero consideration for me to turn on this game. I'm sorry.
I understand. If it would have been the other way, if the game that you were at yesterday would have been a 3-0 game, I would have been like, you got this one, Pat. I'm going to rely on you for the analysis.
And I would play with the bar a lot more too. So try to entertain myself.
No, I think that if there's anything we have found out about Northwestern since their early season loss that they had to Concordia, that was a game they gave up points. Their defense, looked a little rocky. Since then, I mean, even in their loss they had to Morningside last week, 13-7 in that game, they really limited what Morningside was able to do offensively. They did the same thing to Dort this week. So as Northwestern progressive towards the postseason, and this win certainly gives them that momentum to be able to get to the postseason, so long as, things don't go crazy next weekend. That defense will be something that people will have to contend with in the postseason. And I don't see the Red Raiders going into the postseason, getting into a shootout 42-35 against somebody. They're going to get in the postseason, and we're going to have a 14-7, a 14-10, a 7-0 game if the Red Raiders do continue on and make it, of course, into the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to lean on that defense without question, right?
Yeah.
Have to.
Yeah. We go down south. We get into the Sun Conference. Kaiser still undefeated. They had a little bit of resistance potentially in front of them from a Florida Memorial team that was 5-2 on the year, had been rolling. Florida Memorial still maybe had a little bit of a say about, hey, maybe we should be an at-large for the postseason. Kaiser douses those hopes with a 51-16 win. Shea Spencer, 270 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Andrew Burnett, 114 yards, got in the end zone 3 times. This was a game, good momentum builder for Kaiser to keep themselves going to the postseason. On the other side in the Sun Conference, a team that is vying very hard to get a at-large bid. Southeastern has some trouble with Ave Maria. They were trailing late into the fourth quarter in this one before they were able to pull out the 23-21 victory. Ave Maria scored with less than a minute left to play in this ball game. Onside kick, they couldn't recover it, and that's how Southeastern ends out winning. Josiah Neos for Southeastern, 104 yards rushing in this ball game, 2 touchdowns. Quarterback Henry Osted, 104 yards passing. Southeastern, I feel like they needed to continue to make statements as a football team, and this was a game they needed to go out and make a statement in it and win handily to show, like, yes, we are the top 3 in this conference, have a lot of separation from everybody else, so we should be considered for an at-large. This didn't add to that resume, Pat.
No question. Yeah, I don't see that happening. And we kind of talked about it last week. Southeastern maybe a year away to really contend with Kaiser and in St. Thomas in the league. And it's just one of those unfortunate things. You kind of start, unranked and build your way up. It's a challenge. Then you drop to those 2 conference opponents. It's awfully challenging. I don't know if there's any conference outside the frontier that gets 3 in when you start looking at it. Again, we'll talk about that here later, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We go down south for this one. Texas Wesleyan rolls it up on Langston, 49-7. Texas Western running back Ernest Caesar, 25 carries, 212 yards, 6 touchdowns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 touchdowns. He leads the NAIA in rushing touchdowns. I think he's got 32 or 33 now in the regular season. Wow. So heck of a performance by Caesar. Texas Wesleyan has been rolling. Got an opportunity to watch some film on this game. They really nice looking offense. The Rogers kid at quarterback. He is able to get around in the backfield, maneuver really well. Got a real nice set of wide receivers. I want to watch more of this film as we learn more about Texas Wesleyan, because with this win and the losses in front of them, Texas Wesleyan is going to get up to probably 7 or 8 in the ratings. That means that they could get seeded 7 or 8, which means you're hosting in the postseason. And I think that is a lot. That means a lot, I think, to the Rams to be able to make the postseason and potentially be hosting in those early rounds. That could help them out tremendously. Elsewhere, the other game we've got up there, Missouri Baptist, 6-3. Actually, they're not 6-2. They're 6-3. Typo on my part. But they beat Graceland yesterday, who was undefeated in the Heart North. That was setting up for an undefeated matchup with Grandview next week. Now Graceland has got a loss, and that means that, well, they still have a chance to make the postseason. They got to beat Grandview, because what that would do in the Heart Athletic Conference North, it would mean that Grandview would then have 1 loss in the conference, and Graceland would have 1 loss in the conference. And by sport procedures and policies, as I've read those thoroughly also from the Heart Conference, that would mean head-to-head. That means they would be tied in the Heart North, and head-to-head, Graceland would have it. Graceland would get the automatic to the postseason. So even with the loss, Graceland still has a shot at the postseason.
Yeah, it's not nice.
No, I don't.
No. Is there a money line bet on that? I'll take it.
You say, I think it's going to be pretty low money. Grandview is a great ball club. They came out slow against Peru State this week, but they did what Grandview does. They just quarter by quarter, strategically went about it, methodically went about it, and came away with the victory. So it does set up for a potential conference championship game, though, next week. We move on, a game that you were at. St. Francis of Indiana improves to 8-2 with a 27-14 win over St. Xavier. Josh Kolka, 312 yards in this game, 4 touchdowns, only 1 interception. USF forced 5 turnovers. Now, St. Xavier also forced a couple different fumbles and everything like that. They were not able to capitalize on them. Pat, your thoughts on this game? You were the guy that was there.
I was there, had a great seat. Had some unbelievable company with me yesterday too. We can talk about that a little bit later. But my wife, I'm gonna give my wife credit. I don't give my wife enough credit. She's a former coach's wife, is very, very in tune with the game. Her brother was an All-American at St. Francis. She's watched the game for over 40 years. I will tell you something. This is what she said yesterday. It made a lot of sense, and I can draw a comparison to some other games later on. She's like, this looks like a game 1 for these teams. Really sloppy. Turn the ball over. It's like there's just a lot of like game 1 mistakes. I was like, that's a really good point. You're right. It's just something off. I thought St. Francis obviously executed better offensively, some big plays. And St. X was just kind of all over the place, Jason, just not taking care of the football. Just kind of red zone turnovers, just over and over again. With that being said, I think this game, I think St. Francis probably left 2 or 3 scores, off the board, and St. X did the same. I think the score, the gap would have been the same, but I think it should have been a higher score with the amount of turnovers that happened. With that being said, St. Francis, my alma mater, my former employer, my dad's the head football coach, qualified and won the Mid-States West Football Association title with that yesterday. And then the next game we'll talk about with St. Francis of Illinois beating all of that. Anyway, good on them. First time in the postseason, back in the postseason since 2018, which is insane when you think about the history of USF. Good for Dad. I think Josh Kulka will be the player of the year in the conference. I thought he was tremendous. Came in after the second game of the season after the Indiana Wesleyan loss and has taken this team to another level. There's no question.
Yeah.
There's a confidence, Jason. There's a swagger to the team on both sides of the ball. You can see it. When you get great quarterback play, you see the great quarterbacks at any level. When they play well, it permeates throughout the team. There is a confidence. No, that guy is going to give us a chance. And Kulka definitely does. I think he's one of the best in the country from what I've seen. This is going to be an interesting team here coming in the postseason. I will tell you, this is a talented roster, and they're hitting their peak right now. Sloppy a little bit yesterday, but again, the productions there, the big plays are there. Just fine points and details they've got to clean up.
Yeah, and I think the key for St. Francis going into the postseason, honestly, is that they won't get a bye. I think this is a team that the more that they can continue to play together and stay in that rhythm gives them a chance to continue in the postseason. I think if for some reason they ended up taking that week off and then, playing in the round of 16, it might not work out the way that they want it to. I think the more that squad gets to play together as they've come along and grown through the season, they definitely have a chance. Now, Pat and I don't talk about how I put together the slides. I send them to him like, hey man, here's what we're talking about tonight. And then we chat 5 minutes before the show happens. That's all the show prep that happens. You obviously understand why I put that game down below. Olivet Nazarene loses to St. Francis. St. Francis improves to 7-2. Olivet Nazarene was unbeaten in the conference. In the Mid-States Football Association Midwest. This loss gives them a loss, and that means regardless of what happens next week in the St. Francis Olivet Nazarene game, St. Francis will be the conference champion and get the automatic qualification out of the Mid-States Football Association Midwest. So I don't foresee the Cougars losing to Olivet Nazarene, but hey, Nazarene's 5-4. They're no slouch. They've played really good football at times this year. They could jump up and bite the Cougars next week. But St. Francis of Illinois, a very nice victory. Tumulty, 145 yards passing, 139 yards rushing. The other Tumulty had like 89 yards receiving or something like that. I mean, St. Francis, it pains me to watch the Saints not make the postseason because I would like to see what would happen if they got there. But they lost to St. Francis, Indiana. They're not going to get the automatic, and the shot that they would have to have, the things that they would have to happen to get an at-large are, I mean, it's impossible at this point.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think they're a playoff team. I'll be honest with you. Seeing them play multiple times this season, it's unfortunate because I think they are. I think them and Taylor both potentially are. You saw what Taylor did yesterday. My goodness. Oh boy.
Was it 91 or 98 points?
91.
91.
Cue up the Dannelly dry heave. Oh, man. So, I will say this. I think those 4 teams, I'm talking Mid-States, East and West. So you have the St. Francis's in the West, plural, and you have Taylor and obviously Indiana Wesleyan. I think they're all 4 playoff quality. I really do. It's unfortunate. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's as deep as the Frontier because it's not. But I think those 4 are deserving, but will not obviously get that opportunity. So from the eye test of seeing everyone play in person.
Yeah, I would love it if Mid-States just said, hey, we got a bowl game. We're going to have St. Francis, Illinois play Taylor. I'd love to see that game.
It'd be a great game, actually.
Great postseason game.
Yeah.
Those teams
would crank it up for it, too.
Don't quote me because I haven't checked the qualifications and how it all works for the Victory Bowl, but I would assume Taylor would be in contention to potentially
certainly
play in the Victory Bowl.
Do they have Catholic schools in that, Jason? I don't know if that's a thing or not.
I thought
usually
I saw
more the evangelical schools.
I thought I saw somewhere that it was I want to say on my message board, which I don't know if I retained what they said, but I thought they said something like if Campbellsville, Taylor, and somebody else didn't make the postseason, that like the NCCA that they'd be playing in that Victory Bowl. We move on. Let's talk about our first big featured game of the weekend. This was one everybody had their eyes on because Carroll College methodically has been plinking along and plinking off top teams in the NAIA. They knocked off College of Idaho. They knocked off Southern Oregon. They were going to go in to Dillon, Montana, and try to knock off the Bulldogs this week. And early on, it looked like things were going to go the Saints' way. But Montana Western, with a very nice second half, really fourth quarter in this ball game, to come away with the victory. They were trailing 14-3 or 14-13 going into that fourth quarter, Pat. They were able to put together a couple nice drives, capitalize on a turnover, and put this game away. And they did it. You watched this game too. They did it late in the game, running the football.
Mm-hmm. I thought the defenses were exceptional the first three quarters. I mean, really, really good pressure. I thought the defensive coordinators were tremendous in their approach and the blitz schemes that they gave each of these great quarterbacks. I thought they were just tremendous. It was a defensive game. It really was. The fourth quarter, if those who want to go back and watch this game, watch the fourth quarter. That was entertaining, but really it's a defensive battle. Of course, you love defensive football, watch the entire game, but it was very much a defensive struggle. Again, just insane pass rush on both sides with scheme and personnel. And then the fourth quarter got really interesting. And I agree with you. What we talked about with the Bulldogs, with Montana Western, is they had to have the balance. It had to start getting developed. And you said it in the preseason, Jason. You said it after about week 3 when Palandri's throwing for 250 plus and there's very little run game. Mm-hmm. You're seeing the run game now, the balance. And they're very good at it. I will say that. I think, they're 11 personnel spread out a lot with H-back and things like that. But they're still committed to balancing things out as much as possible. And again, it's all based upon what's available, numbers and things of that nature in the box. But I think before I saw Montana Western, who was forcing things on the perimeter that maybe weren't advantageous. Now they're seeing some run opportunity within the box, and they're taking it. And that's created that balance. And we talked about it before. As this season goes on, a playoff run, which we think can happen with this team, you have to be able to have that balance. Play great defense, which they are, and then have that balance offensively. So I think we're seeing that from this team, and I'm excited about where they're going. We talked about, Jason, I went back and watched the preview show just to see kind of where we were. And I tell you what, you're amazing. You nailed so many of these scenarios. You really did. Go back and watch. You're going to have a little confidence boost. Go back and watch your predictions. But you said it, Jason, with this team, you would not be surprised. Whoever wins this league, and Montana Western makes a national championship run. And I don't think that is – I think that's very likely. I think this is a pretty darn good football team. We've seen them have some stinkers every once in a while. Not to their capability. But when they're on and they play exceptionally well on both sides of the ball like this game, I think anything's possible for them.
I think the key for Montana Western right now, obviously winning out, that's key. But the fact that they got back up to number 4, top 4, that means you're hosting up to the semifinals. And then if you make it to the semifinals, then you have to travel. Being top 2 in the country would be more advantageous, but, not having to go on the road for a quarterfinal game, not having to go on the road over Thanksgiving, being able to be at home, those are major advantages in the NAIA postseason, and Montana Western's going to have them. Going back to Carroll's performance real quick, like in this game, Carroll got a little bit of a taste of their own medicine from a week ago. Southern Oregon early on against Carroll last week forced some turnovers and didn't capitalize. Carroll, early in this game, they forced some turnovers. They capitalized on one of them, but they didn't on the other. And boy, if they would have been able to, punch it in and get that first down, it's like 4th and 1. They came at the full house backfield. They came with the big dogs in there, and they booted Perka out to try to get him around the corner. And Western was right there to smack him and turn the ball over on downs. If Carroll could have went back and capitalize on that turnover that they got to get that drive going, we might be talking a little bit differently about this game. But as it goes, and I'm so cliche when I talk about this, Pat, but I've been around NAIA football long enough to understand, like, there's some great players. There's some guys that you're going to be able to air it out to that are going to make plays over other guys that more often than not might not be able to come down with it. But the really good teams in NAIA football capitalize on turnovers, force turnovers. They run the ball pretty decently, and they don't do anything on defense to give up big plays. And that's what Western did in this game. They didn't give up any big plays. They were in the backfield chasing Perka around the entire game. I mean, that young man was running for his life at times, and it showed late in the game as he was not able to get a whole lot of offense going. They only put up 167 total yards, did the Saints in this one. So Western kind of fine-tuning for the postseason. Carroll now sitting on that fringe of the at-large. We'll talk about it here in just a little bit as we get into the postseason. But any other thoughts on this one, Pat?
No, I think this league. I mean, we've said it a million times. It's crazy, and it's a home field advantage. It really is. So, like you mentioned, going into the postseason now, Montana Western having that opportunity to host some playoff games if they can close out everything next week. Huge advantage because they play differently at home. I think that's a real thing. You can say that about all the teams in this league. So that's a huge advantage. I totally agree with you.
I've got some good comments coming into the chat that we'll get to, but I want to get through the featured games first. So Chris, hang on, keep watching the show. I'm going to keep your viewership longer. I'm going to get to your question because that's a really good one that you've got in the chat. Georgetown, Campbellsville. This one for potential, a little bit of a lead in the Mid-South Conference. There was all sorts of other factors. What's Lindsey Wilson going to do? What could Campbellsville do? This one goes into overtime. Georgetown gets the victory 24-17. Darius Neal, 31 carries, 87 yards. Sleneker had 174 yards passing, a touchdown, and an interception. Jagger Gillis, 237 yards passing in this game and a touchdown. This was, I don't want to say the game wasn't entertaining, but it was a slow, methodical game. We have drives. We turn the ball over. Here's another drive. Here's another drive. There wasn't like that, here's that 70-yarder this way and the 65-yarder this way and this block punt to get this. It was a methodical game. You watched it, Pat. What were your thoughts?
Totally agree. I mean, the first drive, Georgetown, like clockwork, like you said, grinds out a drive, executed pretty well. Again, good balance with run and pass. I think Georgetown's screen game is crucial to their offensive execution. They did a great job with that. Excuse me. I think Neal is the real deal. Said it all year. I think he's one of the best players in the NAIA. He is the main guy for this offense. And I thought Campbellsville overall bottled him to some level. I don't know what the breakdown of 31 carries and 87 yards, but that's not a huge yard per carry number compared to what he's normally getting with Neal. But Georgetown played a good enough football game. They were opportunistic on defense, which we'll talk here in a little bit. To Campbellsville. So real quick. So the first drive, touchdown. And then it's kind of slowed from there. Just not a whole lot going on for a while. Campbellsville, they can move the ball. They've got some weapons. I think Gillis is a good player. Talk about a guy that understands their system. You can tell. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of run-pass option looks and things. You can see all the things that he's doing. He's looking at defenders. He's checking out box count. He's doing a lot of things. There's a lot on his plate. And he knows that system very, very well and executes it well. There's some protection things that are really challenging in the RPO game that he takes some shots. Yes. He came out for a drive, and I was kind of curious, Jason. I went back and see, did he take a shot? Because he came out of series, and it was a big one because they put another quarterback in, really athletic kid. I mean, really good-looking player, but threw an egregious interception and a horrible look. It was a cloud corner look. It was cover two. Didn't see a guy threw it right to the corner, and it's pick six the other way. And you look at the score, that's the biggest play of the game.
Yeah, and like I talked about in this one, Pat, early on, there wasn't like that the big plays on offense. The biggest play of the game was the 48-yard interception return by Justin Richardson to get the score. That was really the difference in this one. And like you said, you wish you could get that one back. Was Gillis out because he got dinged? From watching the film, I couldn't see it to see if that was a reason, if there was something else. But he wasn't in for a series. Unfortunately, they turned the ball over on that series. I'm not saying that was the difference in the game. I mean, 7 points was the difference in the game. There was other opportunities that Campbellsville had to try to pull this one out. But if there's and I don't mean this as a slight to Georgetown, but when I look at their season, I feel like the old saying, "You'd rather be lucky than good," is that's kind of their season in a microcosm. And that's not saying that they're not good. They're a good football team, but they've gotten lucky a couple times this year to get to victories. Game against Pikeville, this game going into overtime.
Reinhardt.
They've pulled out some other ones. Reinhardt. I mean, sometimes Lady Luck shines on you, and that's what's been happening with Georgetown in some of these close games. And I think that's also kind of a bigger discussion that you have about NAIA teams. Well, you'll hear team A is not that much better than team B. You're right. They're not, but they find a way to win. And that's what Georgetown has done week over week. And that's why they're 8-2, and they've won the Mid-South Conference.
Yep. They're certainly tested. There's no doubt. Like, they have been put into some tight football games where, I mean, Kaiser really hasn't to some level. I mean, some of the top end teams, the top 15 that are going to be in the postseason, there's some teams, Grandview hasn't been tested.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of that, these top end teams, where I think the Frontier Conference has. I think Georgetown certainly has. I think the Mid-States Football Association teams outside of Indiana Wesleyan, I think, St. Francis certainly has been tested. I don't think Indiana Wesleyan has, and they lost a game to a bad FCS school, which I don't want to bring up again. But it's interesting, and I'm with you. I don't want to cast a stone at the back of a quarterback. I'm sorry, I don't know the young man's name from Campbellsville, but I don't think Gillis makes that throw. I just don't. I think if he's in there, that ball is either thrown away or it's thrown away. He's gonna fight to live another day. He's not gonna throw it into a squat corner. It's just not gonna do that. He's seen that rep too many times. He's seen that look. So, I mean, it is a big deal. And I think the next biggest play, Jason, maybe is in overtime is the strip on the first play that Campbellsville has the ball after Georgetown scored. So 2 defensive plays, in my opinion, were the plays of the game for Georgetown. So, for what it's worth.
I would agree. And that's what I was kind of, watching that game, watching the overtime. Like, all right, let's see how Campbellsville responds. Yeah, you get a strip, sack, ball game over. And we move on. And we move on as well. We go to the Heart of America Athletic Conference in a game that, I'll be completely honest with you, I watched Baker lose to Benedictine. I watched Mid-American Nazarene beat Benedictine last week. And I looked at this game and said, yeah, it's a featured game, but Mid-American Nazarene's got this one. Baker found a way, 20-14. They get the win. The way they found a way was Truman Julesgaard. 145 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 15 carries for 87 yards. Pat, I was impressed with Julesgaard, and I don't know if the coaches like it, but just his aggressiveness to go out and create contact when he's running the football. He's not hook sliding and getting around defenders and going down easy. He's putting his shoulder down and running some dudes over. Helped him win the game. Hopefully you stay healthy, young man.
Yeah. Stones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. I mean, I tell you what, he's a heck of a ball player. I've not seen him run like that before. I don't know if this was, it's like quarterback sweeps, and it's not just like zone reads and quarterback draw stuff or scrambles. There's like design like QB sweep that's kind of cool, and I like what they're doing to get. Anytime you get +1, we used to call it +1 running game, Jason. Most run game, you hand the football off, quarterback stands there and watches the play, right? Well, now the quarterback is the runner, and they're running scheme along with that. You gain a player, +1, right? And they did a great job of that. I thought Baker did a tremendous job. And that was the thing. This is all or nothing game for the Wildcats. It's like, hey, we got to do this. Let's ride our best player. And he was tremendous. I thought he was the player of the game without question. And I think mostly, honestly, because of his legs. I think, and he had a couple plays called back, Jason. There's a kind of back hold that was called back. It was a huge, huge play. I was very impressed with him. Back to drawing my comparison and give my wife credit. There's some sloppiness in this game too.
There really was.
Like some silly stuff, some ball security situations, some poor decisions in the passing game, both sides. Kind of like game one jitters or game one execution issues, if you will. It did not look like the Mid-American team of last week, certainly. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, and there's, you just wonder, is there though, but that letdown? Hey, we got Benedictine, huge game. Yeah. And then, you're trying to get yourself emotionally up for this game. You just couldn't quite get there.
Yeah. It kind of fell flat. The whole effort, the whole demeanor. And it's too bad because I think Mid-American Naz has some players But you'd see some plays even, Jason, and I'm not trying to be critical, but there's just not a lot of physicality even. Like it's almost like last week was our week. We came out and won a miraculous game, and we did everything right, and it was just awesome. And it's just kind of a dud at times. Yeah, it was a competitive game still.
Mm-hmm.
There was just plays you watch, like, my goodness, like, come on, let's go here. This is a big time game, and it just kind of fell flat for me.
I think it was second quarter, maybe late first quarter is when I went. And this one, I'm going back and watching the film. I tried to watch some of it live. I was dipping in and out of the game, so I didn't see all the plays. So when I went back and rewatched it on Huddle, I saw a play first or second quarter. Mid-end comes out. They've kind of got stacked trips to the left side. And, quick snap, and Parsons slings it over there, and all three wide receivers are going to block. And I'm just sitting there watching it like, we're pretty late in the season for miscommunication like that to be happening. And I tried to watch it a couple times, like, well, was it actually a run call? But then we tried to get a hot route and we didn't, there wasn't a communication. But there was that instance, and there's a couple other ones. I mean, Parsons in this game was 18 for 38. I have not looked at his historical statistics. I do know a lot about his career. I will guarantee you this was his worst completion percentage that he had as a starting quarterback since maybe one of his first starts, if ever. So, and you hate to have your worst game against, a rated team that could potentially get you an outright conference championship. But hey, it happens. Mid-Am's not out of it. We'll talk about it here momentarily when we break down the postseason here a little bit. They're still very much, in the hunt for an at-large. The Heart America Athletic Conference in cases of a three-way tie, which we could very well have a three-way tie happening here. They will go with the highest rated team in the NAIA Coaches Top 25 poll to crown their champion. That's what they did last year. So this week's rating that comes out on Monday could kind of help to give you a little bit of clarity if there's a three-way tie and who could potentially be making that postseason. But don't count out the fact that we could see an upset in the final week of the season in the Heart. Pat, anything else on this one?
The Heart America the Heart Conference.
Heart Conference.
Bad habits. Is deep as well. You're looking at, Frontier we talk about, I think Mid-States is extremely deep. I think you can probably put this league right in that mix with the Mid-States of having, multiple teams that are worthy. But it's going to be interesting how it shakes out because, like you said, each went through all those things, the three-way tie situation and how that happens. And obviously we still have a week to go. So a lot still can happen.
A lot still can happen. So we get into the NAIA Top 25, and then we'll get to some questions here. 1 through 5, nothing changing there. We're going to see these teams rated exactly as you see them right now when the ratings come out on Monday from the NAIA coaches. And that the coaches rating tomorrow, they're also going to have a peek at what the ARC ratings will look like on Thursday. All of that voting kind of happens on Monday. So you could see some maneuvering in the top 25, and people might cry like, oh, what are these coaches trying to do? Well, they're actually kind of aligning the ratings a little bit more with the ARC. We go through spots 6 through 10, and this is where I see some important things happening, especially for Texas Wesleyan. With the loss from Dort and the loss from Mid-America Nazarene, they're going to slide back. That's going to get Texas Wesleyan up to minimum 8, if not 7. And like I said, 1 through 8, as long as you're bidding, you're going to be hosting in the postseason. And Texas Wesleyan being able to host in their first round game will be huge for their program. One, they're going to have a postseason game that they'll be hosting, but also somebody is going to have to travel to Dallas, Texas. And the closest teams to them are going to be coming from the KCAC or the Heart probably. So somebody's going to have a pretty good road trip to Dallas to have to play Texas Wesleyan. So you're going to see them move up to 7 or 8 this week. Montana Tech also moving up. That's going to be beneficial to them as they play number 14, well, what will be previously number 14 Carroll College this week. One of our games of the week, and I'll break down why here in a little bit. But Pat, any thoughts on 6 through 10 here?
No, I am anxious to see, just like you, how things are going to shake out with, where things are, the movement that's going to naturally happen with the teams that have dropped games. And like you said, Texas Wesleyan, it's so huge for the NAIA, I think, to have a presence in arguably the greatest football state in our country, and pretty cool. It really is. And we talked about it before, how great it is to see these Florida teams and then now a Texas team, undefeated in the postseason. Very, very cool.
So Benedictine, you see rated there at number 11, Mid-American Nazarene. With the loss, I predict is going to fall behind Benedictine, because I think what coaches will look at is Benedictine lost that game. Yes, a loss is a loss is a loss, but they went for 2 at the end of that ball game to try to get the win. So what if they kick the field goal, go to overtime, all of these things? I think even though Benedictine lost to Mid-American Nazarene, you're going to see Mid-American Nazarene move behind them because of that loss to Baker. So Benedictine will move up. So as we kind of move forward in this conversation about the NAIA postseason, I'm going to go with the assumption that Benedictine will end out with the automatic from the Hart Conference as the conference champion, with them playing William Woods. No offense to Billy Woods out there, but first year program, they're not going to beat Benedictine. I'm sorry, boys. The rest of these, Carroll's going to drop from that 14 spot, losing to Montana Western. Not much. They might go to 15, 16, maybe as low as 18, because it was a close game. You lost on the road to the number 4 team in the country. You shouldn't fall very much at all, but just the nature of the ratings this time of year, Pat, they're going to fall some, and then Baker's going to move up.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see who plays in the round one that we have in the postseason, how that all shakes out, who's going to host and who's coming in. The travel is going to be a huge part of it. It's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, and the top 25 for the coaches is not the say all end all of who's going to make the postseason. We got to keep reminding people of that, because we have the national selection committee, we have the ARC ratings. All these things are considered before the top 25, but the top 25 does give us a glimpse of what that ARC looks like, what the coaches are thinking, what the national selection committee is thinking. 16 through 20, Southern Oregon gets the win over Eastern Oregon. They have to go to College of Idaho. That their playoffs. If Southern Oregon's going to be in the postseason, it starts this week with College of Idaho. They lose, they're not making the postseason. It's as simple as that. Dickinson with the win over Valley, they continue on. Ottawa, Arizona will finish up against Panhandle State this week. They're on the fringe of making the postseason, along with Southeastern, who'll play at Thomas, and then Friends will play at Bethany to potentially win the conference title there. So we've got some interesting spots in 16 through 20 here, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, it's been one of those years where there's so much parity in these leagues, and it's going to come down to the wire. There's no doubt. The final games in many of these races are very pivotal.
You're going to see Evangel drop out of the top 25. That's my prediction from the coaches with their loss to Southwestern. St. Francis is going to move up. Concordia is going to move up. Campbellsville is going to fall out, and Southwestern is going to move up. So we'll probably have 2 new teams in the NAIA top 25. I think one of them is probably going to come out of the mid-states, if not both of them come out of the mid-states, because Lindsey Wilson was right there chomping at the bit to make it into the top 25 and maybe cause a ruckus in the Mid-South if they were able to knock off Georgetown the final week and cause a tie. Well, Lindsey Wilson loses this week. They lose that momentum. Georgetown's going to be the outright champion. So now you've got 2 teams we've talked about, Pat, Taylor and the University of St. Francis, Illinois, that are probably on the doorstep to get into this top 25 when it's released from the coaches tomorrow.
Should be in and probably have zero hope of getting in the postseason.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a pretty good resume that the National Selection Committee is looking at as we get into those. Before we get into all the postseason prognostication and the things that we do there, do want to bring this question up from Chris. Jason, you briefly mentioned how a team might be better not getting a bye week for the postseason, as that might get them off their rhythm. So what teams do you think need a bye versus not? I think I'll just kind of go with the teams I think that do not need a bye. The style of offense that Friends plays, that option football, they do not need a bye. The physical nature of which they play, they probably would like one, but I don't think you want to take a week off from that. I think Southern Oregon is a team. Honestly, right now, the way that their last half of their season has gone, those guys need to keep playing, staying in rhythm. I don't think they're going to benefit from a bye. And kind of looking at the rest
question
of them.
for you. What about Georgetown?
Georgetown had such a weird season with their buys. They played a game, had a bye, played a game, had a bye. I think Georgetown is a team that would benefit from continuing to play. that's a tough one to say because they also might be banged up from all the games that they've played this year that they could benefit from the bye. But
Yeah,
that was
that's
Chris's
a
question.
really good
Hey,
question.
you have any insight on it or anybody I'm forgetting?
Well, the obvious ones. I mean, I think Kaiser is excited about it. Hopefully, getting Meisinger back.
Yep.
It'd be a huge thing for them from a personnel standpoint. I'm sure the top end teams, the Grandviews, and they're going to be playing strong defense and chance to heal up and that sort of thing. So, I think that the teams that are going to most likely earn the bye in the top end will definitely need it. But I think, like you said, like those mid tier teams, like at Georgetown, that's one that struck me is it beneficial for them to play right away and probably host, or get a bye because they're right on that cusp. I think is what's going to happen. How the rankings will shake out to what's going to happen, who's playing, who's not in round one.
So we look at the potential automatic postseason qualifiers in NAIA football from the AAC, Appalachian Athletic Conference. We still have a three-way tie, and the tiebreaker in this one is going to come down to the team that is rated highest in the ARC if there's a three-way tie. Now, Point has a tough game this week against Bluefield. We'll talk about that in a little bit. If Point loses that, then it goes back to just a two-way tie with Pikeville and Reinhardt. Pikeville has the edge over Reinhardt as they beat them in head-to-head. So, long story short, if Point loses, everybody else wins, Pikeville's going to get the automatic. If everybody wins, it'll be the highest-rated team in the ARC. We don't know what that's going to look like. I actually sent an email to the commissioner of the Appalachian Athletic Conference and sports information director there just to ask the question, what if you don't have somebody rated in the ARC? How do you make the postseason? I'm assuming that they have a rater that will rate a team in the ARC to get them considered in there. But that's one that's a little bit of a question mark. No question mark in the Frontier Conference. Montana Western wins that one. Morningside has secured the GPAC. Grandview right now looks like they're going to secure the North. They lose to Graceland, though, then we have a tiebreaker scenario. Grandview still will make the postseason, but one of those at-large spots is going to get taken away from. I don't foresee it happening, but stranger things have happened the final week of the year. The Heart, Mid-American Nazarene, Benedictine, Baker, three-way tie. Highest rated team will make it there, Pat. I think that's Benedictine at this point if they remain in a three-way tie. But Baker has a game against a no-slouch opponent in Missouri Baptist, who's 6-3 this year. So they cannot just waltz into that game thinking they're going to win that one. There's a scenario in the KCAC Kessinger where any one of those three teams you see on the screen, in Friends, McPherson, or Southwestern, could make the postseason. But if Friends wins, it eliminates all of those scenarios, and Friends would get the automatic in the KCAC. The Bissell, the division that was completely up in the air, totally crazy. What the heck's going to go on with these guys? Kansas Wesleyan is guaranteed to make the automatic there. So the conference that were like, this one's going to be crazy, and at the end, well, Kansas Wesleyan went undefeated in the conference and won it through. Mid-South is going to be Georgetown. Mid-East out of the Mid-States will be Indiana Wesleyan. St. Francis out of the Midwest. Dickinson will be out of the North Star. Texas Wesleyan will be out of the Sooner. And Kaiser will be out of the Sun. So that's what we know for sure. So we got a lot of answers, but we still have some questions, Pat, for potential automatic qualifiers.
Yeah, there's no doubt. The real funny thing is, St. Francis is further east than either Indiana Wesleyan and Taylor.
Yes.
They're in the Midwest. Sorry, I just thought that was funny. Geography nerd. Yeah, it's kind of funny because, I think I don't remember the last time Taylor and St. Francis were in the same division, but they're not. So good for St. Francis because they lost to Taylor and they're in. So, and they're playing really well right now. I mean, again, sloppy moments yesterday, but you can still see kind of where they are. And Georgetown is the conundrum to me. They just are. I mean, we watched that game yesterday. Campbellsville had plenty of opportunities. I'm anxious to see what happens if they get a bye week or they are playing round one, kind of maybe possibly previewing, I don't know, Georgetown, St. Francis. I don't know.
Good. It's
Kevin Donnelly ball. I don't know.
It could be. Hey, we'll talk more about that here in a little bit when we get into overtime. So as I look at the potential at-large postseason qualifiers, people, you can drop questions into the chat if you want. We'll try to get to them here. But I think St. Thomas, that one's secured. If there's anybody on this list that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt is going to make it, St. Thomas is the one. I'm going based a little bit off of ratings and projections here of where I think things. So I put Montana Tech as at-large number 2 right now. But if they lose to Carroll College, all of a sudden they're not in at-large number 2. It could be 6. It could be 7. It could be maybe they get left out depending on how the arc goes.
I got to ask you this because of the Frontier. Let's talk hypothetical here. I'm gonna be let's put the tinfoil cap on here. Let's create all the scenarios and conspiracy theories potentially. If Carroll beats Tech this week, okay, who gets that number? Because essentially, I think one of those next teams deserve the at-large too because of the conference strength. That's kind of my feeling on it. I don't know if Northwestern necessarily goes up to like the at-large too. I think it's one of those other teams. It's either Southern Oregon or it is Carroll. I mean, yeah, it's tough to say, and probably Tech is out, right?
It's tough to say because the one thing Southern Oregon has over all the teams that are listed on there in their back little pocket, we beat number 4 Montana Western.
Absolutely,
that's in their back pocket. So as you look at the resume, it's like, yep, Carroll, you went on the road and beat College of Idaho. They're not in the postseason.
Beat them soundly, Jason.
Beat them soundly too. They did beat Southern Oregon home game. And I think that's the knock I've had against the Frontier this year is nobody goes on the road and knocks anybody off. Now, Carroll did. They beat College of Idaho. Montana Tech did. They beat Carroll early in the season. Now, Carroll can prove a lot this week if they go on the road and they knock off Montana Tech. I think that gets them into the discussion. I get asked over and over again, is the Frontier going to get 4 teams in? No. Do they deserve 4 teams in? Probably. But just the way that all this scenario is going to play out with wins and losses and all this, you're going to get Montana Western in as the conference champion, and then you're going to get 2 more. And I think, honestly, even though Southern Oregon is probably the furthest down on this list, I'd lean towards Southern Oregon as long as they win at College of Idaho, which is not an easy task.
No question.
As long as they win that game, then they're in. I think Carroll, with the win over Tech, they're probably in. But I don't know. The ratings tomorrow will tell a lot. The ARC ratings later this week will tell us a whole lot. Now, I say all that to say, Northwestern, I have them as at-large 3. I think that's just if things are gonna work out in the ratings, they'll end up there. If they would have lost to Dort, I think they would have been on the fringe to potentially not make it because then Concordia out of Nebraska has a better resume than Northwestern because they beat Northwestern, who was a top 25 team, and Northwestern would have had no top 25 wins. Well, now they do have one over Dort. I've got 3 teams right now from the Hart Conference making it, Pat. That's probably the shakiest one out there. I think if everybody wins out, there'll be 2 from the Hart for sure make it, and there'll be a 3rd team that's probably left to the wayside. It's just so tough to say what the National Selection Committee is going to say on this.
Baker threw a wrench in everything yesterday.
They did.
They really did.
Baker and Northwestern really did, because if Baker and Northwestern lose, that makes things a whole lot easier to determine that at-large 7 of everybody that's listed there. But because of those wins, now you've got Mid-American Nazarene, you've got Benedictine, you've got a couple other teams that are scrambling here at the end. And Ottawa of Arizona, 2 years in a row, they're going to have 1 loss. They've got a pretty good resume. Their only losses is Texas Wesleyan. That ARC rating from ARC 1 between the Frontier and the Sooner Athletic Conference, where Ottawa, Arizona gets put will be a determining factor if they're going to make it in the postseason. They've got to be rated in that ARC above one of the teams from the Frontier Conference in order to be considered. And if Carroll loses to Montana Tech, then Ottawa, Arizona has a legit say to get that spot in the ARC above a team from the Frontier. And then we're going to be talking about that all next week too.
Yeah. So not talking about any mid-states team. St. Francis, Illinois, Taylor, probably not even in consideration, which is kind of crazy.
It is 2 losses. And I just, where they're rated at and who their wins have come against, the resume's just not there. And I'll update my Around the Nation article this week with the new wins over the top 25 and everybody's records after this week and how that all shakes out. But the two big games this week, as we've talked about, Pat, Carroll College and Montana Tech. Tech's already beat them once this year, but Carroll's proven they can go on the road and beat good teams. And Southwestern and McPherson, that is another big game, just simply because if Southwestern's got an opportunity with a Friends loss to potentially make the postseason. Same with McPherson. I mean, I could say Friends and Bethany is a featured game, but it just doesn't fit the mold. More of the games fit this mold of keep your eye on, because this is the group of games that could really screw up the postseason, Pat.
Yeah, no doubt. Our old friend Coach Ross at Graceland, I don't know. I don't think so. But certainly makes things interesting if that would happen, because
it's Coach Ross, man. It's a Coach Ross club.
He's active ball coach, man. Great recruiter. He's doing great things there in the short time he's been there. But so literally they beat Grandview. It's a tie.
Yeah. Because the loss for Graceland would be to Missouri Baptist. Mm-hmm. And then the loss for Grandview would be to Graceland. Well, since it's a two-way tie, they'll go head-to-head before they go down the road. So there's a chance. Somebody could tell me if I'm wrong, but my interpretation of the Hart sport policy for football, that's what they say for a two-way tie.
Coach Ross is going to have every gadget and gizmo and all the stops, baby. It's going to be fun. That'll be a good game to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it this week. You've got Olivet Nazarene and St. Francis, Illinois. Just a game to Indiana. Pardon me.
Yep.
Pardon me. Just a game to keep your eye on, because St. Francis, they're wavering in that area. They're definitely going to play the first week in the team seeded 13 through 20. They're wavering in that area of could we host or could we not host? And a loss to Olivet Nazarene, I think, moves them down a little bit. And says, hey, that could happen. Getting reminded in the chat, and I've got all sorts of typos. Missouri Baptist is at Baker this week, not Baker at Missouri Baptist. My bad. Thank you, Mr. Bearcat AA23, for correcting at least I got the teams right on that one. I had the teams wrong on Olivet Nazarene, St. Francis, Illinois. 20 years, still can't keep them straight.
Yeah.
It's my brain. It's how it works.
So.
And then Point in Bluefield in this one, Pat, that's if Point loses that game to Bluefield, which is very possible because Bluefield has a very good team, strong offense, then we're in a two-way tie in the Appalachian Athletic Conference, and you're probably seeing Pikeville make the postseason so long as Pikeville beats St. Andrews.
Crazy stuff. Crazy scenarios.
So those are the
That
games.
typical like last week of the NFL, when everything's kind of figured out. Yeah. Very few games matter. People are sitting out and stuff. Yeah, it's not the way in the NAIA. There are games that certainly matter.
This is one of those weeks that I personally cannot do a whole bunch of overtime and answer a whole bunch of questions. And I'm getting reminded here. Missouri Baptist actually in the South, so Grandview and Graceland are actually both 5-0. So it's not even it's a head-to-head game. Whoever wins the game is the conference champion. Thank you, Coach Fuse, for letting me know that one. Coach Fuse, assistant coach for Graceland. Also a former All-American, I believe, from the Victory Sports Network back in the early 2000s at Lindenwood. With that, I say all that. We can't do a big, long show because and answer a whole bunch of questions at the end of this game or at the end of this show because, I've got actual babysitters upstairs because the wife is gone and I kind of need to get out right around 7. But next week, Pat and I will be joining all of you at 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern, so that we're on before the selections come out so we can go through the games and all the chaos that happened, give our predictions, and then inevitably get told that we're wrong a half hour later.
Go back to the preview show, buddy. You nailed a bunch of them.
I don't know.
Another week, but you pretty darn good, man.
Pretty decent on them. So that pretty much does it. I got to get into overtime briefly because you shared a photo with me yesterday And again, thank you everybody for checking out the program. It's awesome to get the interaction that we do and the viewership that we've been getting here on these shows. Great having all of you be a part of this. We get into the overtime because I do have to bring up this photo that you sent me yesterday. That is a cool photo, Pat. Did you actually take that, or?
Actually, no. I think it's my sister who did.
Okay.
Who flew in from Texas to see the last regular season home game for the Cougars this year. But Coach Cronin came up. So Coach Cronin, former head coach on the far right there, the former legendary head coach at Georgetown College, 2 national championships, was also under my dad at Georgetown. It was his offensive coordinator. So those guys spent a lot of time together, won a lot of games at Georgetown before Coach Cronin took over. And I think 1996, was his first year taking over that program. And of course, the middle is Coach Feminist from St. Xavier, then my dad there on the left, Coach Donnelly. So there's a whole lot of wins there, man.
What did I calculate? 792 collegiate wins. If you go all football coaching wins, it's over 800 because Cronin's got like 35 in high school. I think your dad had some in high school before he started at Anderson or something like that too. So
it's significant. Yeah. And all 3 great people, great NAIA guys. I mean, true NAIA guys. I mean, they really are, and have put our affiliation, so many times. And just how many national championships? Coach Cronin's got 2, Dad's got 3, Coach Fem's got 1. So all the national championships there. I mean, played in so many of them. So just good human beings. It was cool to see. They all have a great relationship. My dad and Coach Fem are like best friends. It's hilarious. Yeah. Before the game, they're like hanging out. Like Coach Fem's like hanging out. The coaches. I mean, like it's weird.
Yeah.
Like they're like buddies. They're getting ready to do battle. And first class.
That's great. That's great for college football to have that. To have great coaches, legendary coaches, just have that level of respect for one another. Now, the question I have, and you'll be able to answer this: was your dad ever AFCA president?
No, Dad is not one of those guys.
Yeah, I was going to say he's not one of those guys. So I was going to say there's 3 AFCA NAIA presidents in this, but no. I didn't think he was. He's not. No. I don't. Yeah, knowing him the little bit that I do.
Part of that. Dad's good. Dad was a voter for a while, and that was really stepping out of his comfort zone.
Yeah. Dad says, Bill, Mike, you guys do all that stuff. I'm just going to be over here coaching football. No, but this was awesome to see these guys, all together. It's, heck of a lot of wins. And it takes me back, I've talked obviously, and I wrote a blog about, Coach Donley and kind of how he took me in my early stages of VSN. 2 of the other big adopters early on of the Victory Sports Network when I was doing this, they're also in that picture. Coach Cronin, I remember sitting at the pool in Orlando at my first coaches convention, and he came like walking by and he just kind of stops and he points, he goes, Jason? And I'm like, Coach Cronin? And then we just kind of sat there and talked, me with my fat gut, I'm pretty sure all out, sweating profusely because, it was Orlando in January and I was from Nebraska. But just 3 real early adopters that I owe a lot to in getting me the information that I needed to, be successful covering NAIA football. So it's awesome to see those guys together and still doing it after all these years.
We did a top list in the offseason of the top programs of all time. The top coaches in NAIA history is kind of a cool one, too. And I think these 3 are definitely the top 10 for sure.
Yeah, you've got 3 of them right there.
Yeah, pretty easy. Yeah. There's a few.
The crazy part to me, your dad obviously had Coach Cronin as an assistant. Coach Cronin became the head coach at Georgetown a couple years after your dad left there. And Coach Cronin is the only one retired in this photo.
Yeah. And my dad's the oldest by far.
Yeah, absolutely insane. Man. I love it. It's great.
Still loves it.
No, I'm glad to see the Cougs, getting into the postseason here. It's always good when you've got great coaches in the postseason. So, Pat, anything your son? You sent me a video.
Yeah,
at Michigan State getting the goal.
Pretty cool. Yeah, guys came up a little bit short today, 3-2, but it was a good battle. Yeah, it was just a cool experience. Had a great weekend. I had family in from out of town. My sister from Dallas came up with her kids for the game. Coach Cronin came. My dad had a bunch of former players just to come back and dad's still going, baby. It's not like a retirement thing. They're just coming by to say hello and spend time with Dad, and it was really, really cool. We had tons of former players that just wanted to come back and see him and the final home game of the year potentially. I mean, there's St. Francis put a bid in now, Jason, for the playoffs. We'll see how that shakes out. But you never know. Dad's an older gentleman, so we don't know. But he has got a fire in his belly right now to make another run. I can tell you that much. I spent a lot of time with him last night after the game, and he is excited about his team and for hopefully for a deep run, because I think they have the talent to do it. Jason, got great quarterback playing good defense right now.
Yeah, a lot of questions are going to get answered over this next week. A few programming reminders, of course. My top 25 will come out tomorrow morning. The coaches' top 25 will come out tomorrow afternoon. The ARC ratings will be later this week. My Around the Nation article will come out Wednesday. I've kind of got a postseason primer article that's going to the Victory Sports Network on Tuesday that I've already written. It's in the can. So we've got a lot of exciting stuff about NAIA football that's going to happen this week on VictorySportsNetwork.com. Be sure to check it out. Pat, we're going to have to wrap things up. Any final thoughts?
No. Tune in next week. It's going to be huge. This election, I mean, there's always this controversy. It's so fun, right?
Yeah.
We get to be right in the middle of it. And, I'm not going to be as stressed, certainly, because I'm not on the other side of it. Wayne's like, we get in, where are we going? Who are we hosting? All those things that you're just, you're kind of sitting there and with bated breath waiting on to see what happens. So it's going to be fun for me to sit back and do it this way. And we did it last year too, but this is, kind of a full season now. We've really been immersed in this this great affiliation, and what a great year. I mean, here we are going to the final week in the regular season, but what a tremendous year. The parity, the depth we have of these great teams. I mean, Jason, there's multiple teams. We talk about the top 6, maybe 8. I don't know, man. There's some teams that can make some noise in this postseason.
Yeah, and I think a lot of my questions on who those 8 could be will get answered next week as we see who's kind of got momentum running into the NAIA postseason. All right, man. This was awesome. It's going to be more fun next week. Don't forget, folks, half hour earlier if you're used to joining us at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, 6:30 and 5:30 next week. We'll be talking all sorts about NAIA football. For Pat Donnelly, I'm Jason Dannelly. This has been NAIA Football with Donnelly, Dannelly, all of us from the Victory Sports Network. We'll see ya.